Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of What the FinTech, a podcast from the team behind FinTech Futures and the Banking Technology magazine. My name is Paul Hindle, Managing Editor at FinTech Futures, and for this episode we're joined by Ryan King, co-founder of US FinTech Chime. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. And just to get started, would you like to quickly let us know a bit more about yourself and your career so far?
Yeah, sure. So Ryan King, one of the two co-founders of Chime. I am based in San Francisco, California, where Chime is headquartered. Have lived there most of my life and have spent my career in technology, computer science, studied in college, worked in and around Silicon Valley and startups and tech for my whole life, for a few decades. And I met my co-founder, Chris, in 2012. We started Chime, and here we are 14 years later.
Sounds great. And again, great to have you here. And thanks so much for taking the time out to speak with us today. So on the show this week, we'll be learning more about Chime's development and deployment of ChimeCore, its proprietary core banking platform. In particular, we'll explore the factors that drove the decision to build rather than buy, how the team successfully migrated more than 9 million members without any downtime, and the key lessons learned along the way. We'll also examine how owning the entire tech stack is accelerating Chime's ability to deploy AI and machine learning at scale, the tangible benefits this is delivering to customers, and what this means for the competitive landscape between fintechs and traditional banks. Beyond ChimeCore itself, we'll also take a closer look at how AI is fundamentally reshaping banking operations and customer experiences, and what new possibilities emerge when you combine modern infrastructure with cutting-edge AI capabilities. So to start off with then, Ryan, can you tell us more about how ChimeCore came about then? What were the main factors behind the decision to develop your own in-house solution, and what were the goals you wanted to achieve from this initiative?
Yeah, well, ChimeCore started from a basic belief that if you want to build truly great financial products for everyday Americans, you have to own the foundation that it runs on. You can't really do that as well with rented infrastructure. That was the sort of core tenet that started it. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we started really scaling Chime into the millions of members. And at that point, we hit a crossroads. We hit a sort of inflection point. And at that point in time, we were relying on third-party payment processors and ledgers and things like that. And we realized that limited how fast we could innovate and how resilient we could be and how much control we actually had over our own product roadmap. So we made the epic call to sort of, let's go build it ourselves. And that meant recreating every capability that we had been relying on for our entire existence. Card payments, card processing, ACH, which is the way we move money in the United States, money transfers, security, infrastructure, everything had to be rebuilt from scratch, essentially from the ground up. And it took us like 45 teams, I don't know how many thousands of hours. I think one of my lead engineers told me we had 200 technical design documents, each one, dozens of pages. And then there was over 200 milestones along the way in the project. But all the while, the goals we had were very clear, as we wanted full control of our technology stack and the ability to innovate at the speed that we wanted to. We wanted better cost structure and unit economics, and we wanted a platform that was purpose-built for the future and where we were going and where we saw the world going, of course, including where we saw AI coming into shape.
So you mentioned there, obviously, a huge project. Given the criticality of core banking tech and the scale of Chime, was there any concern about taking the project on of this size, or were you set that this was needed to really future-proof the business?
Well, both. We had a very healthy respect for the complexity, 100%. This isn't something that vibe code over a weekend. It's not a project you take on lightly. You're talking about rebuilding the financial backbone for millions of people who depend on Chime for their paycheck, their bills, their daily lives. So we were hitting a ceiling on what we could build and the flexibility and how fast we could ship and how well we could keep our members' money always available using third-party infrastructure. So we could tell that gap was only going to widen as we grew. So the question for us wasn't really, should we do this or can we do this or how hard is it going to be? It was, can we afford not to? And so the decision really came from understanding it was the only path to controlling our future. Most fintechs rent their infrastructure. Traditional banks obviously run on core systems that are many decades old. We just saw the opportunity to build something purpose-built for us for modern banking, for real-time processing, cloud native, and machine learning and AI built in from day one. So that clarity that we had of purpose sort of even though the scale was daunting. It made the risk feel manageable, even though we knew it was going to be really hard. The execution was going to be incredibly demanding.
Excellent. And what were the most significant technical challenges you encountered during the migration, and how did you overcome those?
I mean, there wasn't one thing. Honestly, the sheer scope was the biggest challenge. It felt like changing the engine of a plane while we were flying it. So it wasn't about modernizing one system. We were rebuilding every capability we depended on, including asset payments, money transfers, everything. All of it had to work together at scale in real time. So there wasn't one thing they were all difficult, but the way we got through it was breaking down the problem into smaller pieces and just sort of going one by one. So one example is just becoming directly integrated with Visa as an issuer processor. That's something that the largest financial institutions typically do, and bringing that in-house required a really deep integration work and a level of rigor that really pushed us to sort of new heights. We brought in the right expertise who works very, very closely with our partners at Visa. And then when we came out on the other side with that fully operational, was one of those moments the team really could feel good about what we'd built.
You've touched on a few things already, but can you break down the migration strategy then in terms of the steps, and how do you plan it out and complete that migration without any downtime or customer disruption?
The steps are, well, just to give you a little bit of timeline, the migration started in 2023 and took multiple years. So there was an end-to-end core technology transformation that we executed it while running at big scale. And so the strategy had to be very methodical. So we migrated in many phases, sort of carefully sequencing which systems and which cohorts of our accounts and our member data was moved when. Every phase had its own set of technical design documents, testing protocols, rollback plans. In fact, once we had our system built, we ran it in parallel in sort of shadow mode for many months so we could do all kinds of validation that it was performing exactly as we expected before cutting over. So it was sort of like running in silence in the background for a long time, where we're just checking and validating every single thing and making sure nothing could go wrong. So the hardest part, like I said, about changing the engine while flying the plane, was the non-negotiable principle that we had from day one was we wanted no disruption to our members. Our members are people who rely on us for their paycheck, their rent, their groceries. You can't just take a system offline for a week and say, oh, well, sorry, you can't access your money, you can't pay your bills. So we designed and engineered the migration to be completely seamless and invisible to our members. So it started in 2023. The final step was completed in November of 2025. So at that point, every account, every transaction, every product and every feature that we had since then has now been run on this infrastructure that we built, and it's secure and scalable and completely in-house.
Excellent. And for any other fintechs or banks considering a similar migration away from legacy core banking infrastructure or third-party infrastructure, what are the most important lessons you learned that you wish you'd known from the start?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is it's going to be way bigger than you think. I felt like every dependency or gnarly thing that we discovered would lead to 3 more. So you need to plan for complexity that you can't even see from the very beginning. And maybe most importantly, you need to build in, or you need to make sure you have the organizational patience to handle that. And then the second thing I would say is this is not just an engineering project. This is a company-wide transformation. We made this our top company-wide priority for multiple years. So that includes product, operations, compliance, risk, customer support. Every team has to understand why this matters, how it affects their work, and be ready to dive in. And then the third thing I would say is a lot of people think, oh, you just built this great platform. Okay, cool. It had these capabilities. It's actually not just building the platform. It's rebuilding all of your features and products on top of that new platform. So imagine you have to build everything you've ever built all over again, every product, every feature, every screen. So like that's the magnitude that you got to have in your mind. So if anyone's considering it, make sure you've got that sort of full scope and not just, build a platform and have it do some transaction processing. And then fourth, I would say you have to invest in the infrastructure to be able to do the migration itself. There's tooling, processes, things to be able to do that safely. You have to treat that as a first-class citizen. So how do you do eval or validation frameworks, all this sort of shadow mode, parallel running capabilities? What happens if you need to roll back? All of that's just as important as the go-forward plans. And that discipline is what lets you do it actually without putting people at risk and their money. So, and then lastly, I kind of touched on this, but you got to have belief at the highest level of leadership of the company that doesn't waver. A project of this scale will get really hard. It'll have moments where you feel like you have no way out. It will take a long time. There'll be many points where the easier thing to do is to stop and give up. And I think the difference between companies that I've seen get this kind of thing done and those who don't is really just about whether leadership can hold the line on why it matters and commit to it over the long run. If you don't have steadfast leaders that won't change or won't give up when it gets hard and can think and optimize for the long term, you won't succeed. So it might take longer than the median tenure of an executive. It probably will. So I think actually technically at Chime, we had 3 CTOs during the project, if you count myself stepping in between our prior CTO and our current CTO. So I think in our case, we were fortunate that it really helped out that Chime is founder-led, and Chris and I were unwavering in our dedication. We've been running the company for a decade, and we knew that's what we needed to do.
Excellent. With technology evolving at such a rapid pace now, how much of a competitive differentiator is being able to own your own core technology? And do you see more companies doing the same kind of moving forward?
I think you'll see the best companies certainly try and many succeed. But like I said, the barrier isn't just technical. So you don't just need like a bunch of smart engineers. It is organizational and sort of willpower. I think traditional banks that are running on decades old cores with layers and layers of, in many cases, multiple different cores from multiple different vendors, I think ripping that out and replacing that is pretty difficult. So I don't think you'll see a lot of sort of the traditional banks doing that. At Chime, I think the fact that we were born sort of cloud native from the start, and we have technology at the center of our culture and our company, and that we were willing to invest years of effort where the payback or the ROI was sort of felt on a much longer time horizon, really had that combination of things. I think that's quite rare. So, and then we see that the advantage compounds over time. So every day that we operate on ChimeCore, we're iterating, improving, building new capabilities on top of it. So it's getting better as we go. So I think this is a real and durable differentiator. It's certainly not unique. Some of the other best fintechs in the world have done the same thing, but I think it's a real competitive differentiator against incumbents, especially.
The Banking Tech Awards 2026 deadline has been extended. You now have until the 24th of July to submit your nomination. This is your final chance to showcase your innovation and join the ranks of the industry's finest. Visit the Banking Tech Awards website now and get those nominations in. Remember, the new deadline is the 24th of July. Time is running out.
And how is owning your tech stack about accelerating your ability to deploy new products and AI machine learning in particular at scale?
ChimeCore has essentially all the data in one place. So that is really a big accelerant for us, both in product velocity, but more importantly, in machine learning and AI. It's sort of that having clean, consistent, standardized data all in one modern system is what makes AI practical for us and not theoretical. We can train models on real-time transaction data. We can deploy them to production in days. We can iterate quickly. So I think the comparison would be if you're operating on a fragmented set of third parties where your data for different products is scattered in other places and your data is siloed, I think, and your access is constrained by someone else's API that they might charge you to use and so forth. Getting the data where you need it to train it to be useful and getting models into production and fine-tuning all that stuff takes sort of months of integration and coordination work. So I've said this before to other folks outside, but like we think of ChimeCore as the crown jewel of Chime. So it really allows us to multiply our advantage of being a technology company versus just being a financial company. So I think as we go into this era of AI, you're going to see a big separation, especially in velocity between the winners and everyone else. I think that distinction is going to matter enormously.
Excellent. I guess building on that, looking at financial services as a whole, how do you see AI fundamentally changing the ways banks and fintechs operate and serve their customers?
Yeah, I mean, that is the question of the day, right? I've been a builder through many waves of technology changes, going back to I won't say the old land, but I was messing with PCs in the 80s and went through the internet, came of age in sort of the internet in the 90s, went through obviously the mobile transformation, cloud. Each one of those felt enormous, and each one was. But I actually think this one we're in now with AI is different from all the prior waves. It's not just a step change in what's possible, it's a slope change. So the rate is changing. The rate of progress is changing. And I don't think that was quite the same with past breakthroughs. So the closest analogy I like to talk about is with the Industrial Revolution. And I've talked about this before, but the Industrial Revolution didn't just give people better tools to make them more efficient. It reorganized physical production around machines. And AI is doing the same thing for knowledge work. So I think, how's this going to change the way banks operate? It's like all of the way financial services companies operate will reorganize around machines at the center. Of course, humans have to be in the loop, have to be accountable because we're dealing with money and there's real consequences, right? And so at Chime, we're already well on this way. We're building what I'd call a virtual factory. So we've created our own software factory and sort of orchestration layer where at every step of the product development process, from idea to getting valuable software into our millions of members' hands, is centered around machines doing most of the heavy lifting and human supervising. So I think every function inside of a company like ours will transform in this way. That's not just about LLMs generating code. It's risk, it's compliance, it's support, design, it's engineering, it's go-to-market, it's marketing, right? So I think that requires, to get through that transformation and come out ahead, requires a couple of things that legacy banks don't have today: modern infrastructure, and that AI can actually work with, and that sort of organizational willingness to reimagine how work gets done. So I think that's really that's fundamental shift that we're going to see.
So you've mentioned how you're deploying it at Chime there as well. Looking from a customer perspective, how is ChimeCore and your deployment of AI more generally directly translating into better outcomes for your members, would you say?
The ChimeCore allows us to operate more efficiently and to develop new features and products and services more quickly. So at Chime, every efficiency that we gain through ChimeCore and AI, we tend to reinvest into the customer and member experience. So even capabilities that improve our bottom line, we tend to use that to make the product better for our members. We've used our full tech stack and machine learning, especially, to get a 30% reduction in fraud losses. Again, great for Chime, but since you asked about our members, that directly means that we have fewer members that are dealing with the stress and disruption of unauthorized transactions, right? So those are two sides of the same coin. And then in regards to the member experience, the most visible way today that our members are impacted is really when it comes to customer support. We do more than 50 million interactions with our members every year. People are talking to us. And by introducing AI across our two main channels, which are live chat and voice, we've been able to make support instant and available 24/7 and consistent. And so when a member calls or chats with us, AI's become very good at instantly understanding the issue, surfacing their account context. It's not, let me put you on hold for 5 minutes while they look up your account, and resolve lots of inquiries in seconds. So for our members, that means faster, more consistent help, and often instantly instead of waiting. So no more waiting on hold, no more waiting for the human to follow with their tools. So where that has taken us to today, over the last few years, is now more than 70% of our member interactions are handled by AI. And then as we look to what happens when you do have a dispute or a unauthorized transaction on your account, 35% of our dispute investigations are automated end to end. So again, some banks will take months and months to look into a problem and figure it out and eventually give you your credit. Ours is becoming increasingly fully automated too. And then we have, in addition to customer service, the way that we're AI is starting to show up for our members is with Jade, our financial assistant that can actually help people with all elements of their financial progress, but starting with understanding where their money's going, creating budgets, things like that. And so that's in the early phases, but we're really encouraged by what that can do for our members in directly coaching and helping them get ahead and where that's going to go. And because we have ChimeCore, it gives us the ability to ship those products and features and improvements in a shorter time. So our members are seeing lots of new great stuff come from Chime and better experiences at a pace that wasn't possible for us before.
Yeah, and I guess building on that a bit as well, if we start looking ahead to the future, which I know can be quite difficult with how quickly things are moving these days, but what new AI-powered products or capabilities are you most excited to build on top of ChimeCore that perhaps wouldn't be feasible on legacy banking infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, it's the area I'm really excited about is what I was just touching on around our Jade, our AI-powered financial assistant that actually in the future can be able to act on your behalf. We're building towards a future where AI inside of Chime isn't just advising you, it can actually do things for you. And so the goal is to put that trusted financial copilot Jade into every member's pocket, helping people spend smarter, save the right, manage their money, and do that more confidently. And so that requires infrastructure that can process data in real time and make intelligent. In order to act, you have to have everything up to the second in real-time understanding and context of what's going on in someone's financial life. So you just simply can't do that on a legacy bank core. You need the kind of unified, modern AI-ready platform that ChimeCore provides. So this is one of our hottest areas of innovation. We've focused on building more flexible, more personalized experiences at scale for how our members move and grow their money. And because we own the full stack, we can create products that work together that help our members' financial standing improve. And rather than trying to force everyone into the same box or the same track, they can be highly bespoke, highly personalized. It's almost like everyone has their own advisor or team of coaches that is just tailored for them and their situation and what they want to achieve. So the most important thing that powers all that is the data that we already have. We're the primary account for millions and millions of Americans. Every paycheck, every bill, every time you decide what to spend your money on, that all flows through us in real time. Our members are very deeply engaged, which I mentioned sort of primacy, but our members on average do 50 or more interactions with us per month. So that's very dense and deep relationship we have with them, and combined with the infrastructure we have to actually act on it in real time and intelligently. That's what makes the vision of having a copilot sort of realistic rather than just a pipe dream.
Excellent. To finish off here, then, what does the future of AI-powered banking look like to you? How will the combination of modern infrastructure and AI change what's possible in financial services?
Yeah, I think we're at a inflection point of how AI is going to fundamentally change the relationship between people and their money. I think up until now, banking has been largely reactive. So you check your balance, you call customer support when something goes wrong. And I think the future that we're headed to is proactive. So banking that anticipates your needs, puts the right information in front of you at the right time, and takes action on your behalf, of course, with your permission. So that's a very different model. It requires infrastructure that most banks don't have. And importantly, it requires trust. Most regular people, especially outside of the bubble that I live in Silicon Valley, are not ready to push the self-driving money button today. So the question is, who's going to bring people along for this journey of what's going to become possible and what the future looks like? And I think it's going to be the most trusted, the one that takes care of people the best. And so the combination of our modern infrastructure and what we've got with AI is what makes this possible. So we see AI not as a trend or a fad, but as really the opening up a whole new world of the next phase of our mission. So using technology to make our products and make banking faster and smarter and actually more human, ironically. So that's what ChimeCore was built for, and we're just getting started.
Thanks again, Ryan, for chatting with us today. To close out the podcast, we have our now infamous FinTech jails. This is where we ask for an industry term, buzzword, or trend that you've seen or heard enough of. Or, of course, you can advocate to free one of the previously incarcerated terms. So what would your selection be for this week?
I would like to free one of the previously incarcerated terms, and I think you could probably guess which one it is just based on word frequency from this conversation. But if I had to free a term from your FinTech jail, it would be AI. I get why it's in your FinTech jail, because it's like you're probably tired of talking about it. But I do think we've really crossed a real inflection point. What's happening now to me is fundamentally different than anything I've seen in decades of building technology. Just when I look at what's happening inside of our company at Chime, AI went from a year ago assisting 29% of our code to now it's 84% of our code just in a few months. Like, as I mentioned, it resolves 70% of our member support interactions. So I think it was certainly overused as a buzzword for a while, but now, at least from where I sit, it's the actual engine of step change progress that we're going to see. So I think keeping AI in jail gives too much cover to people who either don't want to take it seriously or think it's just hype.
Yeah, I mean, AI is one of those words that's gone into and out of the jail more times than I can count over recently.
You put it in one week, you take it out the next week. Yeah,
exactly
right. Yeah.
As you mentioned, largely when it goes in, it's because it's everywhere. But at the same time, I think that's testament to how transformative the technology really is, right? And
yeah,
I think you've made a very good argument across the course of the entire conversation that we've had today. So I'm more than happy to release AI from the jail this week, and we will see you later down the line if anyone wants to send it straight back in again. But for now, Ryan, thank you so much again for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed the conversation.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thanks, of course, to Ryan for joining me. As FinTech Futures, you can find us online at fintechfutures.com. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn to keep up with all the latest fintech news. If you like this podcast and our other episodes, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcasting service to get notified about future episodes. Thanks as well to Arama for editing this podcast. You can check them out at arama.tv. As always, thank you very much for your support, and we'll see you soon for another episode of What the FinTech. But until then, goodbye.